Welcome back. You're watching Today, in our debt counselling company, National Debt Advisors, says South Africans currently have one of the worst savings rates in the world at an alarmingly low 0.5%. Now, this often leads to money-related trauma and anxiety. Now, this Mental Health Awareness Month, National Debt Advisors looks into the impact of financial trauma on our money habits and provides strategies for achieving better financial health. We've got National Debt Advisors Quinton and Ramohlabi, who joins us to discuss this. A very good afternoon to you, Quinton, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. I mean, what are the basic signs of financial trauma and how do they manifest in a person's finances?
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me here. With regards to the financial trauma itself, the signs that we normally pick up, specifically they're based on poverty. We see that a lot of people have been having situations whereby they've been struggling in terms of recovering financially. And of course, that is still impacting many people's life because at the current moment, a lot of people are still battling in terms of how to manage their finances. So that is the biggest sign that impacted a lot of South African consumers, specifically those who are unemployed. And COVID also recently just made things more difficult for a lot of people. So at this point of life, a lot of people, they are unable to manage their finances. And of course, it is very difficult to find even a job at this kind of this point. So a lot of people, they're having those financial trauma, and unfortunate, they are not knowing where to go and how to manage their finances due to the fact that the poverty and of course scarcity with regards to finding a job is more difficult in terms of finding a job and being able to earn a great income so that they can sustain their living expenses.
And of course, this is something that has manifested over a number of years now, and people will have different levels of trauma depending on their circumstances. With that in mind, Quinton, what are some of the self-reflection questions individuals can ask themselves or use to gauge how much financial trauma they're actually experiencing?
Well, as an individual, you will have to ask yourself, do you find or do you feel like you've been forced to make a purchase? After maybe you make a purchase, do you feel like you're having a short income, or you feel like emptiness? Or otherwise, you will have to ask yourself, do you feel extra anxious when you have to buy something that could basically change your life in a better way? So even though you still have enough funds into your bank account, so those are the questions that you have to ask yourself before you can go outside there and make a purchase. I understand that it's not so easy as we speak, but then you know your finances. Everybody have a different financial circumstance situation in general. So you will have to ask yourself those questions based on your income. Then you have to determine if maybe you are able and willing to make a purchase in general.
So with that in mind then, Quinton, what are some of the strategies that we can suggest, or you as the expert in this regard would suggest, to effectively addressing financial trauma?
Well, firstly, you will have to plan. Planning, it's very important in a way of budgeting, creating a budget, and of course stick to it, because that can basically help you as an individual to be able to control your finances. And of course you will have a healthy financial plan in place, because you would know that your income, maybe certain percent of your income you just distribute to your debts or maybe to your living expenses. So budgeting is a standard base for an individual to be able to manage their finances and not to go out of their control. So secondly, you will have to consult a financial assistance or financial planner outside there, so that seeking for assistance, understand that we will say that you have to sit down and plan how to utilize your finances. And it's not so easy for most of the South African consumers, specifically those who do not have any financial literature at the background. So I'm speaking in general. So it's very important to consult one of the debt counselor, financial advisor, so that they can assist you in terms of how you can budget, because that is going to help you, which I normally refer a lot lot of consumers to the organization National Debt Advisors, because what they recently did is they're not only assisting the consumers how to pay their debts, but they also make it very easy for an individual to access those literacy so that they can be able to improve their financial knowledge. And at the end, it's going to better them, to assist them to know how to take control of their finances in general. So lastly, which is very important, is to seek professional help. As I said to you, that they will have to seek for anyone that can help them, guide them how to use their finances, which basically is happening now, because a lot of youth, I'm going to make reference to youth, they coming from the background of not knowing how to manage their finances, constantly making a lot of financial mistakes. So basically recommend for them to seek for professional guidance outside there. So which basically the organization National Debt Advisors played a huge role by giving them those access, making sure that they improve their financial literature to better their financial situation.
Quinton, why do people have so much stress and anxiety around the concept of a debt review? We hear this term bandied about a lot, particularly now when people are struggling to make ends meet and are struggling to meet their debt obligations. But many people are afraid of even inquiring what that is about. Why are people so afraid of it? And is it really as bad as is perceived to be out there? Or is it actually a positive step in cleaning out that debt clutter that people are consumed by at the moment?
Well, what is basically happening there is a lot of debt counselors in companies in South Africa, and some of them, they do, of course, not being compliant, not doing the way they're supposed to do. So that's the reason why a lot of consumers are very anxious and not curious in terms of not wanting to inquire, how is the program, how does it work? So me, myself, standing here knowing the program, how does it work, how it can better the financial situation as an individual. So as debt review itself, it is a relief for a consumer who's going through financial difficulties. I might have to mention to you that debt review is not only helping the consumer to be financial free, but it's also giving the consumer a financial literature in terms of when they are done paying all of their debts under debt review, they will be able to know how to budget and utilize their finances. So a lot of debt review companies that were not compliant, of course, they played a big role in terms of making the society do not believe in debt counseling. So at this point is we're still busy trying to speak to the society and of course giving them what is best for them, making sure that they understand the whole program itself before they can put themselves into anything else. So standing here and speaking about debt review, I would say, and I would advise as an individual if you're going through financial difficulties, of course seek for the professional guidance outside the specifically debt review, or maybe if you don't want to speak to your credit providers directly. But the nice thing about debt review is that your debt counselor will make sure that your assets are being protected, taking legal action through your credit providers, and of course you will pay an affordable installment that will give you peace of mind at the end of the month, and still you will have the remaining finances so that you can cater for your living expenses throughout the month. So as you need to make sure before you join debt review also that you do an investigation, ask for the DC registration number, do necessary research. I understand it's not so easy, but of course consult different people, get different opinions, speak to your credit providers or the NCR itself to find if maybe the company is registered through the National Credit Regulator so that they can able to give you peace of mind.
And finally, and very briefly, if you will, Quinton, the fears, I suppose people get scared that if they're going to debt review, that they'll never be able to open a store account again, or they'll never be able to get a credit card for emergencies. Tell us about what happens after the debt review process. Can one cautiously and smartly then start to approach different forms of debt for any necessity?
Absolutely, yes. When you're done paying all of your accounts under debt review, the program itself is to assist the consumer to be financial free. So, going under debt review, you won't be able to apply for further credit agreements because that counselor doesn't want to damage your financial circumstances more further. I'm making reference to the national debt advisors. How do they operate? So, going under debt review with the organization, remember the main aim is to make the consumer be to assist the consumer to be financial free. So allowing the consumer to keep on opening debts, whereas we're trying to control the consumer's finances to do not fall for this debt trap. So that basically we're not helping the consumer if you allow the consumer to keep on opening their accounts. Hence, the debt review doesn't allow the consumer to open their accounts while they're still busy paying for your debt review program. However, when you're done paying for all of your accounts, debt review doesn't have term. I need to put that in place. It depends on how you pay in your accounts as an individual. So, like for instance, if you do have maybe assets or clothing accounts that you have to pay for like 3 years and you go under debt review, remember the debt counselor negotiate on your behalf with your credit providers to reduce the installment and of course the interest rates, which basically could potentially work on the consumer's favor because that is basically pushing the duration to basically go down on itself. And of course, the consumers is paying extra into their debt review program that is speeding up the process. And when the consumers done paying maybe within a year or 2 years or less, yeah, that the consumer will be issued with a clearance certificate declaring that it's no longer over indebted, and the consumer can start applying for debts, starting over again with a good credit record.
And hopefully doing it a lot smarter than they would have in a previous situation. Quinton, as always, thank you very much for those insights.